losing, highly skilled metal workers because you've melted too many of their masterpieces down. We never really discussed clay and sand collection. They work the same way, although they will require different materials. So, clay collection kind of works like this: you make an area that includes a clay, uh, make an area that includes a clay floor and wall, for example, and mark it as a clay collection zone. If this were sand, you would use a sand collection zone. And then your kilns will use the collect clay job, and you will collect the clay. Clay can be fired in the kilns to make various items. Glass from sand is actually more useful. It has a much, much, much wider array of things that can be built with glass than can be built with clay, but we don't have sand on this map, so we're kind of stuck there. About the only thing I'm going to make out of glass on this map are the windows, and that's because I have a plan for the Animal Power Watchtower that requires windows. However, both clay and sand are effectively infinite resources out of the gate. You will never run out of clay as long as you keep collecting more.
I can't do that there.
You can make pots out of clay, but pots have to be glazed before they can hold important things like food. So there's a separate job for glazing. Glazing requires making certain things that I probably don't even have. You can, however, crank out clay statues, which are not particularly valuable, but of course you can produce them in bulk infinitely, so you can array them all over your fortress, for example. And you can make clay crafts, which are effectively free trade goods. You can basically put collect clay on repeat, and then put make clay craft on repeat, and the two jobs together will just sit there and cycle forever, and there's no cutoff. There are two types, I think, of glazing. One requires ash, and the other requires tin. Generally speaking, the tin glaze is going to be a whole lot harder to come by because unless your map already has tin, you're going to be limited to how much tin you can import.
No.
Let's check and see how well trained our military is. Okay, all of our military in the Smashers squad is now skilled enough that we can just basically put them to work full time. Likewise, our Stabber squad, although they're not all skilled in Spear Dwarf, these guys over here have skill in a weapon skill of some kind, so they're skilled enough they can go year-round as well. The Choppers and Mordaka, I don't have the Choppers as a squad yet. The March Dwarves are ready to go full year-round. We only have the one guy in the Choppers, and he's set up already. So let's check our labors. I thought we assigned profession to Choppers. We may just not have added them to a squad. Unfortunately, since there are no training hammers, only people who will be equipped with training weapons are axes and spears. Hammer dwarves and crossbow dwarves will be using live weapons. Those poor goblins. And now our first weapon traps are going in. Weapon traps are nothing more than some mechanisms with some type of weapon attached to them, usually a trap component type weapon. I recommend the menacing spikes and serrated discs. The discs because they have multiple attacks and will tend to sever limbs. The spears or the spikes will tend to punch holes into anything that can bleed. Not all targets are suitable for either type. Some things can't have limbs cut off. Some things don't bleed because they're made out of, for example, steel. There's no particular type that is perfect with respect to, it affects all things perfectly well. However, when you stick 10 weapon traps, especially discs, in a weapon trap, those discs attack 3 times. So effectively, a goblin steps on a weapon trap and he gets the equivalent of 30 discs attacking him all at once. And so then let's say he avoids them all and he takes another step. Well, there's 30 more discs that just attacked him. He takes another step, has 30 more discs. By the time he's gone 4 or 5 squares, it's highly unlikely he's managed to, survive with all of his limbs intact, let alone survive, perfectly unharmed. Likewise, goblins tend to come in with, some of their pieces not armored, and that results in the predictable consequence of discs and such, having an even more pronounced effect on them. Weapon traps, most weapon traps do not have to be reloaded. If you use an ammo-using item, blowguns, crossbows, bows, if you use those types of items in a weapon trap, then that weapon trap has to be reloaded. Otherwise, no. Now, the purpose of these hatches is to rig up a trap. Once I remove the ramps, this pathway becomes an elevated ledge, basically, on its own. I'm going to anchor it to the wall so it doesn't cave in, but I'm then going to turn around and carve it out underneath and drop the floor of this chamber down about 7 levels. So this will be a giant pit with a narrow walkway over the top. And the goal here is that when the goblins walk in, they are locked in. They can't get out. We will build a pressure plate on the walkway that triggers both of the hatches to open. So when a goblin goes to get off at either end, the hatches will open up behind him or in front of him and prevent him from effectively getting off the walkway. Now what will happen is, Goblin will walk in on this side, trigger the pressure plate, these hatches will open. He won't care because he thinks he can get out the other side, so he'll wind his way through the weapon traps. Even if he makes it, when he gets to this point, he'll trigger this pressure plate, and these hatches will open in front of him. And now he's realized, well, I can't get through this way, but oh look, there's a way I can get out over there. So he'll wander all the way back through the path, only remember this pressure plate's still there, so now this pressure plate hits, and he can't go back the other way either. And he'll wander back and forth across the weapon traps over and over again, effectively grinding himself into a paste. A goblin grinder of this sort can make mincemeat out of even a very large siege. About the only thing that will stop it is eventually the traps will jam up on goblin corpses. And it's not so much that they have to be reloaded, but basically somebody has to go and pull the corpse out of the machine in order for it to continue working. So, eventually you'll get some of your traps will get jammed up with body parts, for example, that you'll have to clean out. Okay, and a caravan has arrived. Give me just a moment, gentlemen. I have to kind of step away from the keyboard for a second, and I'll be right back. Now, here's one you're going to want to pay attention to. Pressure plates are a type of triggering mechanism, just like levers. You have to set what they trigger on. They can trigger on things other than creatures. For example, they can trigger on water and magma levels. You can use them to automate water and magma flow. For example, pump water into a room. When it fills up, when it hits level 7 on the tile with the pressure plate, then, drop a floodgate and stop the water. Or when it drops below a certain level, trigger the water to open up and come flooding in, and have another pressure plate that triggers a floodgate that when it maxes out. You follow me? And that way you can set up automated water or magma flow. Track triggers are for like mine carts. If you want a mine cart to roll across a pressure plate and cause something to happen. I suspect that when we get around to building a minecart shotgun, we're probably going to have to use track triggers to do various things like remove blockades from in front of minecarts to allow them to be moved into loading areas, for example, to be loaded with the items that we will use for our shotgun. In the case of the goblin grinder, what you're really looking for is creature's trigger. Now, you don't want to turn on citizen's trigger. Generally speaking, what you're trying to set up is a situation where enemies will set off the pressure plate, but your citizens don't. Now, included in citizens are merchants and other friendly visitors are counted as citizens for purposes of your pressure plate. Now, what you then have to do once you've got creatures triggers, you have to set the weight limits. Now, the max is already set the way you're probably going to want it. It triggers on anything. But the minimum, there are lots of things that won't trigger it because they're not heavy enough. You set the minimum all the way down to 1,000, and you can't really see it, but this is 1,000, and if I go up higher, what you're really looking at here is 10,100. You want to make sure you go all the way down to the very bottom. So this is, unfortunately, you have to spam the E key until it actually goes all the way down. You'll notice that swordfish, for example, as you go down, it's telling you what things fall into this weight category. So as we keep going down and we keep going down, more and more things are inside our range. Basically, you're setting the minimum and maximum weight range where the pressure plate will trigger. This can be used to set up pressure plates that only open for certain types of critters, or to scatter or to separate out goblins from trolls, for example, if you want to deal with the trolls one way and the goblins another. Typically, however, I don't, it triggers on everything for me. I don't mess around with that kind of detail generally. The difference on whether you let it reset or not is whether you want the pressure plate to be single trigger or, always reset. For this pressure plate, for our goblin grinder, we want it to reset because what we're going to end up doing is having it trigger every time somebody steps on the plate. And then when they step off, it will reset for them. We're going to set up 2 pressure plates, one on either side, both of which are then going to be subsequently linked to both hatches on the side they're on. Weapon traps don't have to be linked up. They are auto-firing, basically. So we've already got one weapon trap in place. That weapon trap will effectively trip the first time something runs over it. The pressure plates have to be linked to what they are going to trigger, in this case the hatches or the bridges or what have you. It is possible to set up things using delays, to have repeaters and calculators, and people have actually built half adders and CPU emulation inside a Dwarf Fortress using combinations of water and fluid logic to handle bits basically in the computer. That kind of stuff is way beyond anything we're going to show you in the newbie tutorial. Feel free to go out there and look at the real calculator people have built, or something like that if you're interested in automation and mathematic logic, for example. There are lots of things you can do with this, just like you can in Minecraft or Terraria. Along the way, we've now got our goblin grinder is basically set up. I mean, we'll enhance it by adding more weapon traps, but at this point, with the first weapon trap in place, once the pressure plates are linked, that's basically a goblin grinder. We're going to add more weapon traps to it so it becomes more lethal, and we'll, drop the pit underneath it so it becomes more lethal that way as well. But this is the basics of the goblin grinder. We've got the initial start up here of our archer pillbox. Unfortunately, with the engravers all busy engraving bedrooms at the moment, it's going to be a while before they actually get along to where they'll come out and be able to smooth and carve the fortifications necessary to do that. They've got probably a quarter of the bedrooms left to do yet, and it's already 10:30, so my suspicion is they won't finish before I'm going to tonight. Which will end up with a situation where they're not going to be done, and we'll have to skip that until next session. Alright, that'll take care of the left side.
I can't do it. I just can't.
Betrayed! Betrayed by the cats! You dwarves may have spotted me, but you will not catch me.
And we finally have the lever will now, after here in a minute, be linked to all of the cages so we can get started on the goblin butchering section of our entertainment for this evening.
Quick run, indetected.
can't do it.
Sir, you can't do that there.
Our trader has gone AWOL to get a drink.
Why do you think I can do this?
Three more cages to link, and then we can get on with the slaughter.
Another dwarf has got an idea. Best get the dogs out and assign it to him in case he
You
goes
there,
mad.
I'm building an artifact. Give me the workshop.
But I was just about to...
Give me the workshop.
But...
Give it to me. Give it to me.
Okay.
That's my favorite artifact trigger sound from SoundSense, by the way. 69 pairs of iron chain leggings, all going into the melt.
At last, I finished the artifact. Oh, it's beautiful. I'll name you after my mother.
And there is our new artifact.
No. I said no. No.
Now we get the choice of whether we would like to become a barony or not. Now, this first time I'm going to pass, but the second time we will come back and do this again. I need to figure out who we will recommend as a baron, because keep in mind, as we go up, we have to deal with the additional mandates of those additional dwarves. And so it's good to figure out who you would choose. Based on what they like, you can kind of figure out what they're going to demand, what they're going to ban exports on, and so forth. That basically will allow you to control better what your nobles are expecting of you. Our fortress is now worth nearly 1.5 million dwarf bucks, which isn't much in the grand scheme of things, but it's pretty good. Nobles are pretty much a waste of space. There are certain tasks I think that they'll do, like removing... I think they remove constructions, and of course they'll pull levers, but for the most part, you just treat a noble as an extra mouth. They're like kids. Only they demand stuff and punish people that don't live up to their demands, and yeah. Yeah, there's that too. I don't think you can actually manually assign someone to a jail that's set up to be used by justice. You can put animals on a chain, but I don't think you can assign a dwarf to a chain under any circumstances. You can, however, do all kinds of nasty tricks to your nobles because they'll pull levers. Like, I don't know, creating a lever whose sole function is to raise a bridge and then effectively locking them in their own room with the bridge so that they walk in the room, pull the lever, and effectively never get out again. Because of the delay in triggering a bridge, it's theoretically possible to have them pull a lever, take a step, get crushed by an atom smasher. It's possible to get them to pull a lever that drains the river directly into their room. Also viable with magma. Though I would personally use water so you don't destroy their furniture and you can give it to the next noble. When he asks why the floor is all muddy, you don't have to tell him. Yeah, ceiling collapses are possible. But if you're going to do a ceiling collapse, you build it over the top of a big magma reservoir, and you just build a floor out there and have the lever collapse the floor, and yeah. Now, personally, I don't find nobles too much of a bother, usually. It's not to say I haven't run into a few who were better suited as, how shall I put this, crop planting aids. But the majority are, generally speaking, workable. Okay, guys, it's about 10 minutes to the end of our fortress for this evening. Let's look at what we didn't cover tonight so we can kind of get an idea what's coming up. We didn't cover... I've set it up, but I don't think I've actually covered it yet. Value adds. We've set up but haven't finished our Archer pillbox. We haven't made our cavern connection, and we haven't started doing any engraving yet. So those are going to get moved to session 5. Session 4 is probably the last one I will do before this weekend. I've done this for about 4 hours a night, every day this week. So tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday, I'm probably going to take off. I will post on Reddit, of course, when I'm going to come back and do this again for our 5th session, and I will try to get the first 4 uploaded to YouTube for those of you who want to go back and catch the highlights. If you guys have any questions, now's probably a really good time to do this. I'm trying not to be up till midnight again tonight. Oh, no, I can't go to bed just yet. I forgot. We haven't done this part yet. Oh, it's on. Okay, all you people who've not been paying attention because you're bored with me trading with caravans, the goblin slaughter is about to commence. You should probably pay attention now. And as the military floods in from outside, here we go. As soon as they're all assembled, we'll get on with the slaughter and get to it. Looks like some of them are still carrying the items they were carrying before they became soldiers officially. Oh, you know, come to think of it, I don't know if we ever assigned these guys their actual uniforms, did we? Dope! Wrestlers are not a good idea here. Nope, never created a uniform for them. That's bad. Okay, we gotta fix that real fast. Give us just a second. Our dwarves are going to run off and go pick up some... There is actually a functional advantage. It's been tested that there is an advantage to stacking 6 cloaks if you're really going to do it. You can run into issues where you go to stack 6 cloaks on a dwarf and they they bug out basically and can't figure out how to equip everything you've told them to equip. You kind of have to figure out how to deal with that problem on your own. Okay, guys, at this point, all of the militia that probably are going to get a weapon or armor have gone and gotten it and come back. So we should assume that we are probably ready to get the lever pulled and the slaughter underway. And it begins! And it's over!
Why do you think I can do this?
I think one of the dwarves may have gotten knocked out, actually. Um, I'll pull up the combat report here and see if I can figure out which one. Yeah, maybe not. I didn't actually equip them with training weapons. I think I took their equipment as well. At this point, I was just looking to get them done because we've got a huge number. Oh, stands up. Maybe this is the guy that got knocked over. Yeah, there you go. Bites the Goblin Spearman. This looks like one of our guys didn't have his gear. I probably don't have axes and spears and armor for the axe and spearman yet. No significant injuries have been sustained in the fortress aside from the war dogs, which are out there in front and have problems standing up, and they have motor nerve damage and sensory nerve damage because they've been getting stabbed over and over again by every kobold that comes in to take stuff. Now, of course, we have to deal with the unfortunate consequences of what do you do with all this crap laying around on the ground here. That should keep the haulers busy for till the middle of next session. Okay, guys, I've butchered the goblins. Our goblin grinder is effectively built, but not quite ready yet because it's only partially got all the traps built. The pressure plates are in place. Oh, the engravers finally got done. We can actually get the fortifications carved properly here. This will be awesome. Our engravers will come along and effectively make that wall permeable. We'll build a small set of bridges that will act as a shutter on the south side of the wall, and our archers will station themselves on the north side of the wall. And at that point, I think we're pretty much in business. Basically, this whole room becomes one giant kill zone. If it flies, the archers can still attack it. We're going to have some weapon traps on the left side at the doorway as well. If it doesn't fly, it'll have to pass through the goblin grinder, at which point it will die. Uh-oh. Got a masterwork of somebody that got smoked. Not good. Yeah, see this right here? This is what I was talking about, guys. Right here. Gotta watch for that. You can build fortifications in place. You don't have to carve them out of natural stone. But since I'm going to have to cut a hole in the wall anyway. Basically, the fortifications being carved from natural stone, all that does is gets me around the pond or up on the surface that's causing us problems. Basically, you end up having to punch a hole on one side or the other because when you build all three bridges, somebody will get stranded on top and they won't be able to get down back into the pit because the bridges will effectively block access to the ramps below them. So when the shutters are open like this, and they'll be built in the open position, you end up with a situation where if they don't have a way off on their current level, you end up with somebody stranded on the bridge and they starve to death. Now, basically, what we'll end up doing is we'll link a lever in somewhere in the lever complex that will open the shutters and close the shutters, and we'll leave them open most of the time. But if we start to notice that when a siege arrives that there are potentially arrow shooters in the siege, then we will just, raise the shutters and let the grinder take care of those, and then open the grinder once there's no more danger to our archers.
The fortress needs something.
Oh look, he wants more crutches. Failing to complete a mandate can cause the application of the justice system. So once you have a justice system built, if you're going to use the justice system at all, then you basically become locked into filling out the noble mandates. If you never bother to build a justice system, and you basically ignore all dwarven crimes, then justice effectively doesn't have any effect in your fortress, and so the fact that you don't meet a mandate, basically the only effect is that a noble is a little unhappy from time to time. Okay guys, it's 11:08. The archer pillbox is about halfway done. Our goblin grinder is about a quarter of the way done at best. Our goblin corpses from our slaughter have begun making their way to the dump zone. Let's see if our engravers are highly skilled enough where I can just set them loose or not. Okay, they're not too bad. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn off that engraver. Let's see if I remember it later. Ha 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 ha. We're going to turn off that engraver and set the other guy loose on engraving people's stuff that we care about, like the dining room. Because if there's one thing a legendary +5 engraver ought to do, it's engrave your dining room. And watch him go. Mortal wounding of the kobold Schlodus by one of our dogs in the beginning in the attempted theft. Yeah, he didn't make it. And there go the masterpiece engravings all over. Yeah, every tile, well, I shouldn't say every tile will have a different engraving. Some of them will depict the same things, but yeah, but for the most part, you're going to get lots and lots of different things. Here's the expedition leader elevation. Here is the masterfully prepared meal that some dwarven cook made along the way. Another thing about the militia commander getting promoted. The foundation of our settlement. Another one about the expedition leader. The symbol of our... apparently the symbol of our government is a wave. Another one about the militia commander. One about the chief medical dwarf. I'm thinking that our chief medical dwarf doesn't like flies, and so now we have an engraving of flies in our dining room depicting the dwarf that doesn't like them, I believe. Absolutely detests flies. Let me think. So yeah, our engraver just engraved a well-designed engraving of the thing that the person that the engraving depicts hates surrounding them. If anybody ever tells you that engravers are not sadists, yeah, they're lying. And our dining room has now crossed into royal status. All of the engravings are visible if you come back as an adventurer at some point in the future. And, you know, from a recording all of your history kind of standpoint, it's probably better if you don't just engrave every surface of your fortress in the first 3 years. If you give it, you know, every couple of years you go back and engrave a little bit more and engrave a little bit more, you'll get better results because you'll kind of depict the history. Generally speaking, as soon as I have enough skill for my engraver, I'm doing the dining room because I need the value for, you know, the happiness value for my dwarves. But you might want to, for purposes of documenting your fortress's history, spread your engraving out over a period rather than just doing it all at once. If you care. Okay. I gotta quit now or I'm gonna keep doing this all night, and that's not any good. I gotta sleep. So, we're gonna go ahead and save the game. If you guys have any questions, get them asked now. Otherwise, stick them in the Reddit thread, or I'll see you next time. Awesome. We'll probably pick up Monday or Tuesday of next week. I'm going to take a couple days off. Like I said, this is 4 sessions in, and I've done 4+ hours every day this week. At 16 hours into this fortress, I'm about ready to take a momentary breather from it. So I'll post on the Reddit thread when I get back to it, and I should have, sometime this week, this stuff up on YouTube. It should be up on Twitch at least through Monday. And by then the stuff will be up on YouTube. So the next thread will actually have a link to my channel for those of you who haven't already been there and seen Tin Sound, as well as links to the first 4 episodes for the people who care. The interludes that I do there at the beginning before I bounce the thread when we first start, I'm probably not even going to bother to archive those. Those are mostly just me answering a couple of brief questions about the development of the fortress. I don't really consider them part of our tutorial. If somebody has a question about those, they can always, you know, ask me. And, you know, once we finish this fortress, I'm probably going to go back and, you know, I'll continue playing my own fortresses and give it a couple of weeks, and then I'll go back and do another tutorial series just like this one. So for those of you who are looking to kind of get a repeat performance, so to speak, you can always tune in for the next one as well. Have a good night, guys, and I'll see you next week.